Morning, guys. So let's get started. Today class will be a continue. So morning class, let's get started. Today course will be continue from the previous class. In previous class we talk about an array. So what is an array? Array is a sequence of memory space in your computer, and we can store a sequence of elements, a sequence of data inside this array structure. So by using this array, we can make some of the operations easier and let us to store a lot of data in one structure, in one data structure. So this is what array for. So for example, let's say you want to store the scores for 30 students. And how would you store them? And maybe before you know about array, maybe you will do so. You define 30 integer student test score, and then you store it one by one. But then this is not realistic. What if you are required to store 1,000 of these scores, right? Or 100,000 of the scores? So it's not practical to define the variables one by one like this. So a better way would be to define an array with 30 elements. So in this case, we define a student test score array with integer type. So the elements inside this array have to be integer, and it can fit 30 elements. And the template for defining an array would be like type would be like integer, float, double, long, and then your array name would be like any name you like, and then a bracket, and then in between your bracket would be the length of the array, like 30, like 100 or 200 or 1,000. So this is a template for array definition or declaration. And then how would you initialize your array? Let's say you define an array like this, and then you can initialize it right away. After a bracket, write an equal sign, and then a pair of curly braces, and then write the number one by one to initialize your array. And then like if you define 10 numbers over here, your name array would automatically have a length of 10. This is automatically like calculated by the C++ compiler. And then you can define it like this. If you write name one, an array of length 1, and then you define more than one elements over here, it's not allowed. This is invalid. So you will get, most probably you will get a compiler issue while compiling your code. But if you define it as 10 elements and you initialize it as 2, then this is allowed. The remaining one will be automatically be initialized as 0 element. And how would you retrieve a value? So the template looks like this. Your array name, and then a pair of bracket, and then your index. Remember, index start with 0. So if you have 30 elements, let's say you have 30, your array length is 30, then the index starts from 0 and end with 29, 0 until 29. And this is how you can get a value from the this is to assign a value to an array. Like you assign a value to this array with this to this specific array position. And how to retrieve a value? Let's say you want to retrieve a first value. then it would be like name and then a bracket and then index. Index would be like 0 until 29. So this is a sample of the array. First, we're declaring an array with 5 elements, and then we are storing something into the array. So for this second line, we are storing 9 into the first position of the array. 0 means the first position. We're storing 9 into the first position of the array, and then we're storing 7 into the fifth position of the array number. And then when we print out this, actually we have demonstrated this already last week. So if we print out this thing, then what will be printed out will be 90007, because those elements which you haven't initialized yet, they are automatically being initialized as 0. So it prints out 90007. So this is a quick recap on array. Also, there's a special array called character array. Right. So for character array, there are many methods to initialize them. There are a few examples over here. These are a few examples. So let's say you have you define one character array, and then you can define all your characters here, and remember to end it in \0. Also, another way, which is much simpler, would be to define it like this, to quote it around a string, to define it like a string. You see, this is a single quote, but for a string, it's a double quote. If you define it as a string, you don't have to write a \0. Also, this is allowed. You don't need the equal sign at all. So these are a few ways to define a character array. Yeah. Okay, so these are our quick recap of last week's lecture. Today, we will continue to talk about array, but today is about something more complex. Today is two-dimension array. Okay. And yeah. Today we'll be talking about two-dimension array and nested loop. So these are some recaps about array and how can we loop over an array. If we wanna print out all the elements inside an array, you can loop through 0 until the length of the array, and then we print it out. And then one thing to note is that you see the index in the array and the controlling variable we use for a loop is the same thing. We use I to control the loop, but also we use I to print out the array's elements. And for multi-dimension array, so today we'll be talking about multi-dimension array. So previously in our array, the element inside our array would be something simpler, like it would be integer, it would be float, double, long, this kind of basic data type. But then actually array can store something complex also. For example, array can store another array, right? This array actually can store another array. This is actually allowed. So if you store another array inside our array, then we have multi-dimensions array, right? If you store one array inside one array, then this is at least two-dimension array. If you store more nested layer, it will be more dimensions array. So below is an example. This is an example of a two-dimension array. So for this two-dimension array, what we are defining here is you are defining two row and two column. What are rows? So here, remember the index start from 0, right? So array 0, what we are defining here is two array, array 0, array 1. And then for each of these array, they are storing an array as well. So for each of this array, they are storing an array of 3 elements. So this array 0 is storing an array of 3 elements. This array 1 is storing an array of 3 elements. So in total, we have 6 elements. And how could we access these values? So we start counting from by row and then column. The first one would be row, the second one would be column. And so what is a row? Row is the vertical direction is row. So this way is called row. And then from up to down, down to up, this way is called column. This is a column, this is second column, this is third column. So this is the 0th row and 0th column. Okay, and then this is a 0th row and first column, and this is the 0th row and then the second column. So 0, 2. So 0th row, 0th column, so 0, 0. And this is the first row, 0th column, so first 0. And then this is first row, first column, so 1, 1. Right? And then this is first row, second column, so 1, 2. And how could we initialize a two-dimensional array? Remember, we do something like row first, right? So here when we initialize it, we follow the same approach. It should be row first. So you see, we have 3 rows, 5 column. So we need to define 3 rows. 3 rows, see? 1 row, 2 row, 3 rows. And then 5 column. So in each of your row, define 5. You can initialize it with 5 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, to initialize an array, you need to wrap those elements in between a curly braces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has to be inside a curly braces, right? And then for all of these, they should be inside a curly braces as well. So this is to initialize the first dimension array, and then this is for initialize the second dimension array, second dimension. And then what if, let's say you have 3 rows, but then you didn't initialize all of them. It is supposed to have 5 elements inside each row. It's supposed to have 5 columns, but then for this case, initialize it with 2 elements. What will happen is this allowed? Yeah, this is allowed. So all those remaining space will be filled with the default value. The default value is 0. For integer is 0. Or for if it is a Boolean type, if it is a Boolean type, and then the default value will be false. And this will be false. All those remaining data will be false. And what if during the array initialization, you didn't fill up the first one, the first bracket? This is supposed to be the row number of rows. This is allowed. So during initialization of the array, you are allowed to like skip the most left length. So you can skip this one, and the compiler will automatically calculate a value for you. If let's say you have 3 rows over here, right? then compiler will automatically assign a tree over here. It's automatically calculated. You don't have to write it by yourself. And then what if you don't, you see, for each of these rows, we are wrapping the elements around a curly braces. What if you want to skip the curly braces for each rows? Is this allowed? Yes, this is allowed. And the compiler will automatically, it will know which one is first row, which one is second row. Why? Because already we mentioned that there are 5 elements in each row. So a compiler will read 5 elements and group them into a first row, and then another 5 elements, group them into a second row, then another 5 elements, group them into a third row. So you don't have to explicitly write the curly braces to separate out each rows. And then how about this? If we write the length 3 and then there is no length over here for a column, is this allowed? We can try it by ourselves. Okay, so integer array 3, say it's called ARR 3, and then the column 1 has no data, equal, say this 1, 2, and 6, 7, 8. And if we run it, so it throws error. It's saying that array must have bounds for all dimensions except the first. That means except the most left one, all of this bracket, if you have multiple bracket, all of this bracket have to be filled. Except the first one. The first one, actually, you can make it empty and the compiler will calculate it for you. But other than that, all the others should have a value, have a length. And how about this one? This one is actually incorrect also, because remember, only the most left one can be empty. If you try to run this, it throws error as well. Declaration of array as multidimensional array must have bounds for all dimensions except the first. And for each, so there is a quiz over here. For each of the array initialization method, which one will not cause compiler issue? So for first one, we have 3 columns and unknown number of rows. We have 3 columns and unknown number of rows. This looks fine for me, but we can try it by ourselves. Okay, if you try to run it, it throws error. It's saying that, oh, the comma is missing. Saying that comma is missing. We need a comma to separate between the curly braces. Now it works. And how about the second one? The second one have 3 rows and 2 columns. So 3 rows, 2 columns. And so at most there are 6 elements. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 elements over here. So the elements numbers match. And this one is correct. How about a third one? So for a third one, we just mentioned about this kind of scenarios. We define the length of the row, but we didn't define the length of the column. This is not allowed. And thus, this one would be incorrect. How about fourth one? We define 2 row, but 3 column. 2 row, 3 column, but then there are 3 rows over here. 3 rows, 2 column. This is not allowed. Why? Because at most these structures support 2 rows, but then we define it as 3 rows. So there are not enough spaces for storing these 3 rows inside 2 rows of spaces. So this is invalid. Actually, we can try it by ourselves as well. Copy it and print. So it throws error. What if we fix it? We say if it is 3 row, 3 column, then this is allowed. That no error being thrown. And how could we access the value inside 2-dimension array? It's very similar to 1-dimension array, and just now we have we worked through it already. So if you want to get the data of the 0th row and the second column, remember our index start from 0, so 0th row and second column. This is the 0th column, 0th column, first column, second column. So we can access it like 3 would be array 0, 2. 0, 2 have value 3. So if you assign it like this, our integer array will have a value of 3. Integer array will have a value of 3. And then what if you want to change the data inside your array? You want to update the data, manipulate the data. So you can do it like this. We are going to write 0 into, this is 9, this is 9, this is probably 9. The first row and the first row and the third column. This is the first row. The third column is 0, 1, 2, 3. This is the third column. So we assign, so this would be 6, 7, 8, 0, 10. If we assign this, we assign 0. So it will be 6, 7, 8, 0, 10. There is a sample over here. Given, so what would the what value will be printed out? Array first and then, so first row would be 2, and then second row would second column would be 4. Right, so 4 will be printed out. And for this, 3, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, and a 0, 0 column. So 4 will be printed out. How about this? 2 and then 1. 0, 1, 2. So row 2, and then column 1. Column 1, column 0. This is column 0, this is column 1. So column 1 will be 4 as well. And there's another question here. So let's say we have an array A with 5 elements. I think that this is a sample, this is a questions from the homework exercises session. Later we'll go through it. And then we can mix use our array with a loop. so that we can like access the data or store data more efficiently. Previously, when we talk about single layer array, already we demonstrated how we mix use it with a for loop. And then for double array, for two-dimensional array, we can use it with a for loop as well, or maybe with nested for loop, with double for loop. So let's say you want to print out all the elements inside your array. You want to print out the row 0, column 0, row 0, column 1, row 0, column 2, until row 0, column 4. And then row 1, column 0, row 1, column 1, until row 1, column 4. So this script is basically printing out all the elements inside our array. But then if you look at your access pattern, there is actually some kind of patterns. So the first one will always be 0, and then 1, and then 2. And then we increase the column number. So if you are familiar with loop, immediately you know that this is a perfect situation for us to use a loop, right? We can write a loop like this. So this is for row. For a row, it should be from 0 to 3. For a row, it should be from 0, 1, 2, so 0 to 3. And then for column, we increase the column one by one, right? So for column, it should be from 0 to 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 to 5. And then we print out the array one by one, right? By using these nested for loops, we can easily print out all the elements inside the array. And let's have a details look on how these double for loops work. So in the first time when we enter this array, I would be 0, right? So let's say I is 0 now. Then we are entering the J loop array. We are entering the J loop. Inside J loop, I is 0, so I 0, right? So for demonstration purpose, let's say this is 0, and then this is J. What will be printed out? It will be array, the first row of the 0th row, the row 0 of the array with J column. J column will be from 0 to 4, right? So it will print out array 0, 0, array 0, 1, array 0, 2, array 0, until array 0, 4. And then this loop ends. And we go back to our first loop. The first loop, now I plus plus, so I would be 1 now. When I would be 1, we're going back into the loop J and print out one by all the columns one by one. And so on and so forth until I equal to, and now we have printed out all the elements inside the array. And then there are some questions over here. Later we go through it together. And as you can see, just now we demonstrated a nested loop, right? There's a two-dimension loop. Over here is a two-dimension loop. And two-dimension loop is something, or multi-dimension loops or nested loops is something very powerful. By utilizing it, you can do many complex operations. What are these? So there are some of the samples here. let's say you are required to print out a table that looks like this. 1 times 1 equal 1, 1 times 2 equal 2, until 1 times 9 equal 9. And then 2 times 1 equal 2, 2 times 2 equal 4, until 2 times 9 equal to 18. And then print out each of these rows until the 9th row. 9 times 1 equal 9, until 9 times 9 equal to 81. Have you noticed or have you found out the pattern? So what is the pattern here? If you are required to print out all of this, of course, we shouldn't just write this out. We shouldn't print it explicitly one by ourselves. We should make use of some loop to make our work easier, right? What if you have a requirement to print out 100 rows until 100 times 1 equal 100, and then 100 times 9 equal 900? Then we really need to make use of loops to automate this kind of calculation, right? So you have to find a pattern out. What is the pattern here? The pattern here is that that's the first one. For the row is controlled by this this number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this can be the outer loop. And then for each row, let's say this is a row. For each row, the column increase. The number in the column increase 1, 2 until 9. So this could be the second layer, the second for loop inside this outer for loop. So a 2-layer for loop, a nested for loop, can automate our task to print out this table. Let's take a look in details. So first, we want to print out from 1 to 9. So this is the basics, right? We want to print out 1 until 9 for each row, right? So how to print out 1 until 9? You can make use of this structure, this for structure. Initialize your I as 1 and then loop until it is less than 10. That means it loops until 9. And so it prints out. This prints out 1 until 9. And then a sample over here is saying that what if we want to print out the multiple of 2? Let's say we want to print out the second row. If we want to print out the multiple of 2, how can we do so? We can just, if this value is 2, then we can increase. We need a for loop. We can always increase the I from 1 to 9. So it will be 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, until 2 times 9. This is the second row, right? 2 times 1 until 2 times 9. And then this will print out 2, 4, 6 until 18. And then for a third row, you can do it a similar way. So this will be 3, and then 3 times 1, 3 times 2 until 3 times 9, right? For 4 is the same thing. So you at last you have something like this. 1 plus 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3, 1 until 1 times 9. This is the first row, and then until the 9th row. But then this is not a good practice. This is not bad code. Why? Because what if you are required to print out until 100 lines or 1,000 rows? Then this is not practical, right? So a better way is to make use of another loop. If you notice a pattern here, you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 9. So there is a pattern here. That means we can tag this out as another loop, right? Let's tag this out for another loop. And yeah, so we have 2 loops now. The first loop is for the yellow color one. The first loop is for yellow color one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the second loop is for this I. Second loop is for this I times something. That means the first loop is for row, the second loop is for column. Right. So first time I would be 1, and then we're entering the second layer loop, 1 times 1 until 1 times 9. And then after this loop ended, we're going back to the first loop again. Now this times the I is 2. So 2 times 1 until 2 times 9. Right. And we can print this out, and this would be something we want. Let's try it by ourselves. Very cool. Copy this. Yeah, it prints out 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3, until 9 times 1, until 9 times 9. And we actually, so what if the requirement is not 1 times 1 to 9 times 9. You are required to print out 100, 1 times 1 times 1 until 1 times 100, until 100 times 1 to 100 times 100. Then we can easily change this length, and you will get 100 times 100 array. So the output is too large, so it's being skipped. See, 99 times 93 equal 920 until 99 times 99. So as you can see, this nested loop thing is very, very powerful. Using it, you can do a lot of complex operations and increase a lot of your efficiency. And then later, maybe in the exercises session, you'll be required to print out ninth row of this asterisk symbol, and then for each row there should be 9 column as well. There should be 9 asterisks as well. So these are 9 times 9 asterisks. This is very simple, right? We can do it. Actually, we can do it right away. So prints out an asterisk. And then so for each row, we print out 9 asterisks, and then after each row, we need to have a break, a line break. We need to make it to a second line. So this prints out 9 times 9 asterisks. It's very simple. How about this? This is something more complex. This is one of our exercises. If you're interested, you can try it out. But you can try it out now. Let's say. So the first row should have 1 asterisk. The second row 2 asterisks until the 9th row 9 asterisks. So we can do something like this. For first row, 1 asterisk, right? So this would print out. This would runs once only. For second row, let's say J is 1. Second row, I is 2. Now I is 2. So J would loop until, they should loop until 2. Right? So I make this 3 because this is lesser than, okay? And it prints out something like this. And then how powerful is loop? If you want to make it 100, you want to have 100 rows, this is possible as well, right? or like 30 rows. Now you have 30 rows that looks like this. And then there are some complex questions as well in the homework session. So let's say you are given an array with 3 rows and 5 columns. So this array have 3 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is one row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is another row. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is another row. And the requirement you are given is to invert the array vertically. What does that mean? That means what the row in the bottom should be moved to above. The row at the top should be moved to bottom. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will be the first row, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 should be on the bottom. And then so this is a questions. There is no explanation here. There is a questions inside our platforms. It's one of the homework. And then also there's another question. This is asking you that it's not just invert it vertically. After we invert it vertically, we need to invert it horizontally as well, right? You see, for this one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. After we move 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the top, we need to invert it horizontally to make it 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And then second row, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then the last row is from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but then we invert it vertically. And then after we invert it vertically, now we need to invert it horizontally. So it will become 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And how can you do so? This is one of the questions in our homework session. So these are all about today's lecture. Let's have a recap. Today we talk about two-dimension array. So you can define an array of array, right? This by itself is an array. And inside your with 3 elements. These 3 elements each have 5 elements inside, right? So this is an example of a two-dimensional array. And also we introduced nested loop. Nested loop is something very, very powerful, as we have demonstrated just now. By utilizing it, you can do a lot of complex operations. And then it's not something to be scared of. It's just a loop inside a loop. It's not something. So don't be scared. And then you are saying that what if you want to have 3-dimensional array? Actually, this is possible as well. Let's try. Actually, we can try it by ourselves. If you want to have 3-dimensional array, let's say it will be 5. Each of these should be 2 elements. 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. So let's say this is our 3 dimensions array. 6, 7, 7, 5, 10, 11, 12, 14, now you see inside this. So in the first dimension, wait, in the first dimension, there are 3 rows, right? There are 3 elements. Inside these 3 elements, each of them have 5 elements, right? 5 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And inside each 5 element is an array itself, so it can have 2 elements. So it have 1, 2, 2. It have 2 elements. Right? If you try to run it, it's allowed. And how could we print out all the data inside this array? Can do it so. For then we need 3 loops for this case. I lesser than 3. And then we print out AR I J K and separate the bells. Well, space. So wait, separated by a space. Don't separate it by, and here we separate it by triple space, by a comma, let's say. Okay, by a double space, let's say. And then at the outer loop, we separate it by end of line. So we have 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6. 5 elements. Each element is an array as well. Each element has two number as well. Right. So by this way, we have printed out our 3-dimensional array. And you would be asking, when do we need 3-dimensional array, right? So for example, for 3D modeling, it's not like a 2D screen. For 3D modeling, for each of the pixel inside a 3D, we need to have a specific color, right? Then this is where we need to have 3 dimension, right? As you can see, multi-dimensional is something very, very powerful. And yeah, that's all about today's lecture. Next week, we'll continue talking about, we'll introduce something very different next week. Next week would be pointers and reference. Pointers and reference is something like, a very important concept in C++. So this is what makes C++ so fast and so efficient compared to other languages like Python or JavaScript. So because C++ have this pointer and reference thing, so it gives you more control over the memory. And we will introduce these concepts in next week's lecture. So stay tuned. And this is all about today's lecture. Let's take a break. We will come back. We continue the exercise session at like, let's say 10:03. We'll continue at 10:03 for the exercise session. Hello guys, it's 10:03. Let's continue to the exercise session. So first question. Which we go through the actually we already go through this just now in the lecture. For the array initialization method, which one is correct? Which one would not have the compiler issue? The first one is incorrect because there's no comma in between the curly braces. The second one is correct. The third one is incorrect because it doesn't specify the length of the column, right? The second dimension doesn't has a length. So this is incorrect. The third one specifying that there are 2 rows, 3 columns. But then this is incorrect because it is initialized as 3 rows, 2 columns. So this is incorrect. The only correct one is the second one. And observe the following program. What will be printed out? For 1, 2. So row 1, row 0, row 1, row 1, and then column 2. Column 0, column 1, column 2. So will be 4. Row 3, column 0. 0, row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3, column 0. Still will be 4. And then row 2, column 1. Row 0, row 1, row 2, column 1, row 0, row 1. So still will be 4. So there's a question here. It's saying that we have an array with 5 rows, 2 columns, right? And then for these 5 rows, 2 columns, we need to print out 1 to 10, 1 until 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We need to print out 1 until 10. And okay, now the problem is one of the element is incorrect. It should be 6. Then we need to manipulate it to make it correct, right? So how can we do so? So there are 5 rows. So we can make it looks better. So there are 5 rows. And then we want to manipulate this. So this is row 0, row 1, row 2, row 2, column 1. Row 2, column 1 should be 6. So we change row 2, column 1 to 6. And this is correct. This is asking us to print out 3 times 3. Oh. So there is an input. We are accepting an input 1 until 9. But then we want to store this. We want to store this into our array. When we print it out, should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So array I j should be I times 3 plus j. Plus j plus 1. Yeah, it should be 1 times 3 plus j plus 1. So why is that so? Because for first row, it starts from 0. For second row, it starts from 3. plus the column, and then plus 1 because the column start from 0. So this is something like a maths problem. And yeah, this is it. So an array have 3 rows and 4 columns. Use a for loop. Prints out all the elements inside the third row and separate your element by a space. So how can we print out all the elements inside the first row? Can do it. So we can look through the third row and then print out all the I. So this is another way to write a for loop. This is something more automatic. You just need to write I and then with a semicolon, then it automatically loop through your array. This is something more advanced, but we can use the normal way as well. I equal 0 lesser than 5, and then we print out array A, second row, I column. Right. And this works as well. This is another method to loop through an array. And as you can see, this is much simpler. Yeah, both works. We miss one. Lesser. Oh, there are 6 columns, so lesser to 6. Yeah. We have 3 row, 4 columns, and then print out all the elements inside A. How can we do so? So my code demonstrated here is that we can look through an array easily using something like auto and then column. This is something more advanced, but for now we can look through by using the old way. I equal to 0, I lesser 3. This is for row. I plus plus for second level. Put j equals 0, z lesser than 6, j plus plus. And then we're going to print out A, I, j, and separated by space, right? Yeah. But then if you are interested, you can try this out as well. So that this first loop, it loops through all the rows inside array A. So level 1 is actually an array, and we didn't specify which type it is. By using the auto keyword, the compiler automatically assign a type for it based on the type of the elements inside array A. So the compiler can infer a type of it. So for this case, level 1 is an array. And then you ask it to automatically loop through level 1 array as well. So it loops through all the elements inside. And if you run it, it does the same thing, right? If you're interested, look it up online for this kind of syntax. But for now, let's stick to the basic syntax first. The basic syntax would be to have 3 parts separated by the semicolon. And then to print out 9 times 9 of asterisk. So this is quite simple. We demonstrated already just now in the lecture. Also, to print out the asterisk in this pattern is also you demonstrated it just now. Okay, so there's a question here. So let's say we have bank and the customers come to deposit or retrieve their money. Now we need a program to handle how much money is in each client's bank account. And the sample input is like the first row, the first number is N. That means how many customers do we have? And then the second row, the second number will be T. T means how many transactions will happen. And then after T, after we read and T, there will be T input. Let's say we read in 5, there will be 5 inputs. And then inside the input, there are 3 numbers. First number, 3 numbers, and TD. N means which customer, the first customer or second customer or what, starting from 0. This means the 0th customer, the first customer, and then the second customer. And then T means what kind of transaction is that? Is that deposit or is that taking out money? And so T is either 1 or 2. And then the third number means how the amount in move. So the amount is 10,000 or 5,000 or 2,000 or 500. So process this data and then print out how much money each customers on. So first we should read in N and T. N means how many customers are they. After we got the N, now we can initialize our an array to store the bank amount of each customers. So array N, let's say we initialize it as 0. Actually, it's not needed. By default, integer is 0. It's okay. Just leave it there. And then after N and T, we need to read in NTM for T time, right? So we look from 0 to T and then we read in N and T and M. If T equal to 1, that means this deposit. We put money inside our bank account, right? So for this N customer bank account, we add M. So for this 0th customer, we add 5,000 into his bank account. If this is a second customer, so sorry, for T equal to means taking our money. For this case, this guy's bank account should be minus by this amount, right? So array N, his bank account minus M. And after we process all those T, now we need to print out how much money each customers have. We need another loop, right? We need to loop through the bank accounts. So we loop through it and print out the amount inside this bank account. Let's run it. Let's say copy paste. So at the end of the day, 0th customer has 4,000, right? Because he input 5,000 and then he retrieved 1,000. So he left 4,000 in his bank account. First customer has 10,000, second customer has 1,500. Then there's another question here. This is about array, asking to invert the array upside down. So this is something like a math question. I will leave it to you guys to figure it out, how you actually manipulate like how you actually manipulate this array to make it upside down. So that means you have to assign the value here to here and assign the value upper part to a lower part. How can you design your loop to do so, right? This is something for you to figure out. If you are interested, If you're interested, please try it out by yourself. You can write your own code. And then another question is not just invert it upside down, we need to invert it vertically as well. And then yeah, this is also something for you to figure it out. How can you control your loop and control your variable inside the array to make it inverted vertically and horizontally. It's an interesting problem. Let's look at a few more questions, a few more quizzes. These are statements about two-dimensional array. Which one is incorrect? So the first one, integer array, we didn't specify the number of rows, but we specify a number of columns. Is this correct? This is actually correct. How about second one? There are 3 rows and 2 columns, and we initialize it as with 5 elements. Then is this correct? This is incorrect. It's saying that inside A there are 5 elements. This is incorrect because inside A there are actually 6 elements. 3 rows, 2 columns calculated into 3 times 2 will be 6 elements. So we initialize it as 5 elements, but the remaining one, the 6 elements, would be 0. So there are actually 6 elements inside A. So this is incorrect. How about a third one? If there are 3 rows and 2 columns, and for each row there are 2 integer elements. Is this correct? This is correct. Right? For each row there are 2 columns, 2 integer. And how about this one? This is valid. Yeah, this is valid. Although there are 6 elements inside, but if you initialize it as 5 elements, it's allowed. So which one is incorrect? This is saying that there are 3 rows and 2 columns, and this is valid. Obviously, this is wrong. This is invalid. If we have 3 rows and 2 columns, but then now we initialize it at 2 rows, 3 columns, this is incorrect because we are trying to store 3 elements inside 2 elements column. This column only supports 2 elements, but we are going to store 3 elements. This is incorrect. How about this? A 2 row 3 column, there are 2 rows. This is correct. How about this? There are 2 row 3 columns, and we initialize it as 2 row 3 columns, and it's saying that the curly braces can be skipped, and we can define it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 without the curly braces in between. This is correct. If you didn't put the curly braces, the compiler will figure it out for you. How about this one? 2 rows, 3 columns, and this is valid. Yeah. So this statement is correct. So here the problem is asking you to print out 1 until 100. So we can try it out. How to print out 1 until 100 for I equal 0, I lesser than I equal to 1, I lesser than 10, I plus plus, or I lesser than 100, or 1, I plus plus, and then print out I separated by space. But then when we found 10, we need to add a line break, right? So if I is a multiple of 10, print the line break. Right now we can print out 1 until 100. Let's say you want to 100 until 1,000. We can do it as well. Right, 1 until 1,000. And then here it requires us to print out these patterns. So top has how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Prints out 9 and then egg asterisk 7 until 1 asterisk. This is not hard, but it's a fun problem. You can try out by yourself. And there are another patterns here. This is harder, but still it's fun. You can try out by yourself as well. And then, yeah. So basically that's all about today's lectures, and today's we have talked about, we have a recap on array, and we have introduced the multi-dimensional array, specifically two-dimensional array. Also, we have introduced you nested loop, and nested loop is something very powerful. So this is all about today's lecture, and next week we start to talk about pointer and reference. It's something very unique to C++ and very, very powerful as well. So see you guys next week and stay tuned. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.